John. Hi, Catherine.
Hey,
Hi,
Kiah.
Kia.
Hi, John.
Hi, Catherine. Hi, Kia.
Well, before we kick into today's episode, Catherine, I believe congratulations are in order. Tell us about your big update.
Oh, yeah. So by the time this podcast is airing, I will have started a new job. I left American Banker and am now, I guess, as of when this is airing, working at Punchbowl News covering tax and trade policy.
That's very exciting. I hope you still can talk to us about banking, but now I feel like we get to add tax and trade to our potential movies that we'll watch.
I hope so.
And John, I
Most
hope there's
fun.
no hard feelings with Catherine, right?
No hard feelings. And Catherine just joins the illustrious and expansive AV Alumni Network, which or diaspora, which is wide and broad.
Well, John, thank you for joining us today to bring your expertise about the 1983 movie Trading Places, which is a comedy. And I'm really excited to pick your brain on some of the legal aspects and the kind of the legacy of this movie. But before we begin, what is everyone's favorite commodity? John, what's yours?
I mean, probably by volume, it's got to be coffee, right? I think I consume the most coffee. I mean, probably technically bread or something would probably be what I consume more of, but it's the one that's closer to my heart.
For sure. Catherine?
Okay, I probably would have said coffee, but if we're doing one per, then I'll go with corn. Love corn.
What's your favorite way that corn is made?
Like elote,
Okay.
like corn with like chili powder and like sour cream and cheese grilled.
Okay.
I feel like as someone from Nebraska, I have to say that like most of the commodity corn is not for human consumption.
Right.
So
Well, that's less fun. What about you, Kiah?
I really love pork belly.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, hard
That's
to beat.
great.
I know. I like the idea that like it's so close to bacon already. Like we couldn't just do one pig part, or like we couldn't do one pig. We had to like cut up the pig and then we sell that part of the pig on like a market.
They can just slice pork belly, or is there anything else to it?
I think the relationship between pork belly and bacon is a circle, like the Venn diagram's a circle. I don't
Right.
know if
It's
there's
just
like
the one
another
other thing.
use for pork belly.
No.
Okay, I would love to get past the animal parts convo and get to the finance part of this or the movie.
All
Fair enough.
right, fair. So John, can you tell us what this movie is about?
Trading Places. What is it about? I mean, it has a couple of different levels. I think it is fundamentally about. It's like basically debunking eugenics. I think is kind of the point of the movie. Are people's kind of like outcomes and behavior based on their environment or kind of something inherent in themselves, and the whole that is at the center of the movie is these two rich people kind of like playing God with people's lives in really disgusting ways, um, and to kind of like settle a little gentleman's bet among them about whether people are the way they are because of something inherent in themselves or because it's just the circumstances that they find themselves in. Um, and I think that, I mean, for me, that's like kind of the point of the movie. That's what it's about. What I think is interesting about the movie is the way that it sort of demystifies finance,
Mm-hmm.
and makes it sort of. I think there's a way that that finance sort of puts itself on a bit of a pedestal, like an intellectual pedestal of like, well, you wouldn't understand all of this. It's all very complicated, but just trust me and give me some money, and it'll be fine. And I think what if you actually understand what's going on, you're like, it's actually not terribly complicated, and what's kind of right and wrong and ethical and unethical is actually like much plainer to see than they make it seem. And I think that's kind of what I like about the movie.
Catherine, what would you add to that?
I think he nailed it. There's the commodities trading part of it.
Right.
I mean, but that's like a vehicle, right? It's not,
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I think that's what the movie's about.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned that finance is on the pedestal and it's kind of contrasted to less savory ways that people have to survive in the economy or less savory aspects. Like there's a scene involving a jail. There's like these ideas of like I read that it's a retelling of Prince and the Pauper. So there's a lot of contrast between, these privileged spaces, often indoor, rubbing elbows, lots of plenty, and then like less, again, the less savory, the outdoor, the illicit, the not legal. There's like a scene involving a pawn shop. So there are these like aspects of society and the economy that they kind of compare and contrast to as this bet plays out.
Yeah, there's a real like Jonathan Swift kind of like sensibility throughout. I mean, just look at the opening credits, which were like quite long. Which is like a funny thing that like movies don't really do anymore is like take like 4.5 to 5 minutes to like set the scene of like we're in like hey everybody we're in Philadelphia. If you weren't sure, like there's the bell. Like it's but there's like the rich guys like breakfast being made, and then there's like the commuters like crossing the street and getting on the subway. And there's like people in the inner city with like vacant houses playing basketball, and it's kind of like hey how the whole economy starts its day kind of but contrasting sort of the most wealthy kind of protagonist with like everybody else. I think is kind of an interesting and instant kind of like tone setting in the movie.
So this was my first time seeing Trading Places. Had either of you guys seen Trading Places?
I had never seen Trading Places, which I was a little bit surprised about because in my family, we do like a lot of, old Dan Aykroyd, Eddie Murphy movies. Like we were big Blues Brothers people, but never seen Trading Places before this.
John?
I have seen this. This is one of those movies that I feel like came on HBO during the day, like for years and years. And if I was like homesick or whatever, I would end up catching like the first half or second half of it. So I feel like I had been aware of it and seen snippets of it for a long time. I watched it again probably like 15 years ago when I kind of got into covering finance, uh,
Nice.
and and then did not see it again until just now. So some there's always a risk when you're watching an '80s movie. You never know just how poorly it's going to age, and I think we are going to get into that with some length. But when I saw this movie for the first time in the modern, like as an adult, I was covering the CFTC, and I was like, oh wow, like I get this. Like this is kind of my lane now, and I thought that was kind of cool. There aren't a lot of commodity stories. There are a lot of commodity movies out there. This is probably the only one.
And before we move into the conversation about the movie itself, do you guys have any fun facts that about the movie that you want to share?
I have a couple about like the actors and
Okay.
development.
Yes.
Okay, I think that we may all have known this, or we may have all found this out. But the movie was originally written with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder in mind instead of Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
But then uh, Richard Pryor caught on fire and
Yep.
and scheduling, and so it was Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. And I think this was also the first movie that Dan Aykroyd was in after the death of his longtime comedic partner John Belushi. So,
Oh,
um, and for Jamie Lee Curtis, this was like the first non-horror movie she was in.
right.
This was like the first movie where she was funny. It kind of like launched her career in a lot of ways. That's kind of what I got.
I'll add to that. This was Eddie Murphy's second movie, but he was a rising star on SNL, and actually, I think this and maybe like a subsequent movie he was popular enough that he stopped needing to go on SNL. But like he was becoming a movie star, but and you can see like we can debate how funny I found this movie, but he was so good in this movie.
He was good.
Yeah. I did not know that this was written for or like with Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor in mind, but the movie makes so much more sense watching it again with that information. I don't think I knew that until we prepped for this podcast. The other thing I'll add is that there's actually a callback to this movie in the 1988 film Coming to America, which is
Oh
also with
yeah,
Eddie
yeah. It's like
Murphy.
the two of
Oh,
them, right?
Like, so the main character, Eddie Murphy plays in Coming to America, like hands a bunch of money to like some homeless people. And those homeless people turn out to be Mortimer and Randolph Duke. And they're like, we're back,
it's
and
funny.
Yeah.
it's kind of a funny callback. Um,
I
Same
didn't know that.
director, I
That's
think there's
funny.
a connection. Yeah.
Also, hopefully throughout this podcast, I will say a bunch of numbers or a bunch of dollars that I'm going to adjust for 2025, 2026 inflation. So this movie also was right when like the great VHS at home rollout was happening, like VCRs in your house. And it was priced at $39.95 in 1983 or 84, whenever it comes out on VHS. And they're not coming out that fast. Like I think it was some time. And that would be $127 today,
It's
which is
absolutely insane.
crazy to me. I can't conceptualize a world where that's a dollar figure and you're like, and people were like clamoring for this in-home technology so they could watch this. Also, this movie was like, the script was named one of the funniest scripts of all time, comedies of all time. So it was a box office success, $125 in 1984. And then like its legacy of comedic gold, I guess.
But was that just what cassettes cost in 1984? Like they were all
Yeah.
$40?
Yeah. Actually, this was in the Wikipedia. This was a very cheap. VHSs were normally
Hmm.
$80 in
What?
1984. And they priced this very cheaply to incentivize people to buy them, right? Like they're trying to get people to adopt the technology. So they have to lower the price below its cost.
That's
I
insane.
know.
Like like you have to watch this movie 1,000 times to make it economically viable to buy it versus
$125. There's not like there are
like
concerts I won't go to
$250.
see for $125,
I
right?
think there's most concerts I wouldn't go to see for. I mean, if most VHSs are $80, like that's like
Right.
$500 or like what $250 in modern money. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
no thanks. Like, there's no movie that good.
Okay, so it's the 1980s, and I had some observations about the environment. John, you talked a little about the setting of Philadelphia, which I thought was interesting, given that when I think of commodity trading hotspots, I don't think of Philadelphia. But the movie is in the 1980s, and it's famously a boom time in the United States. Greed is good. So it's maybe not surprising that there's like a Wall Street financial angle. And then there's also like, I hope I don't spoil it for anyone, and I hope we're all mature listeners. There's also a lot of like drugs as a plot device in this movie. And I was thinking about the war on drugs in the 1970s and maybe how that was like kind of coming in, and who is like a moral person or who's an amoral person, and things like that. Did you guys have any other observations about the setting or the environment about the movie?
Totally. Like to your point about it being in Philly, which is like, now you think of the hot financial market like New York or whatever. I mean, yeah, this just goes to show like different time. I mean, back then, like Philly, Chicago, like there were a lot of other markets where like finance could be booming, like where there were commodities trading floors, that just it, has evolved, has
Right.
changed.
I feel like now, like all movies are set in either like New York or LA or like San Francisco, and that's just
Hmm.
like the only setting that is possible for like or like in the Marvel universe. So they're like on Mars or something. Um, but a lot of '80s movies are like they'll be like they're set like Home Alone is in Chicago.
Right.
Like this movie's in Philadelphia.
I'm thinking of like Breakfast Club and 16 Candles. Those are very suburban settings as well.
Yeah, Yeah, or like,
Yeah.
I mean, I just thought of Meteor Man because it's like the only movie back then that was set in DC. I grew up in DC, and I was like, "That's our movie," and I'm like, um, but I think they don't come like that's just one thing that's kind of like not really about this movie, or just kind of more about the time that it's like set in sort of the hinterlands a little bit, and that there's a I think that Philadelphia is maybe chosen to be kind of like an old money kind of vibe. Uh,
Sure. Like a blue
so like
blood.
yeah, more than like, a Silicon Valley, or I don't know what would be um, the sort of up and coming economy of the 80s. But um, there's a very kind of like um, patrician, wood paneling and, starched butlers and that kind of, Ivy League sort of like vibe to it. I think it's trying to cast pretty early.
And a very clear stark divide between like the socioeconomic classes that you just like can physically see so well.
So John had mentioned that the finance elements are kind of just like the conduit for the plot and the bet and the contrast. But we're here. This is a podcast where we talk about these things. And so my question for you, Catherine, is: Did uh, can you tell me some of the financial themes that are in this movie? And did you think they did a good job explaining these themes or a bad job?
Okay, so as we learned when we discussed margin call, Kia, you and I have different standards for Hollywood explaining finance, okay? Like I bet most of America didn't know didn't know what a commodity was, or like, how commodity trading worked when this movie came out. So there's like that great scene where the Duke brothers like sit Eddie Murphy down, Valentine down, and they're like, "So what is a commodity?" And they explain like agricultural products, and like you trade based on like what you think the value will be, and whatnot. And I mean, it doesn't go into all of the details, but like it's a very good like to call back, explain to me like I'm a golden
Golden
retriever
retriever.
moment. And so I mean, I think that's good. Does it go deep into like the ins and outs of finance and whatnot? No, but it alludes, hey, look, there's an actual margin call in this
Right,
one
right. Yes.
versus
No,
the
I
last
was
movie
pretty excited
called
about that.
Margin Call. Um, and they say like, oh, the Dukes are cornering the
I
market.
know.
With context clues, you kind of get what that means. Like it means that they're like trying to control the price. So overall, I thought it was good. I thought it was enough. I can already tell that you're gonna have a different opinion, but let's let our guest
Yeah,
opine.
John, so you watched this to cover the CFTC and you said you learned something. Tell us, do you think they did a good job explaining what the themes are and and did they do a good job?
I mean, I think for the purposes of telling the story, I think so. Like for the purposes of like educating uh the viewer in general about like how finance works, like maybe not. Like there's a lot that's kind of not explained. It's funny because like I think that the whole reason that the Dukes are commodity brokers at all is to aid in making the business more real to the viewer, right? So if
Sure.
they were all doing like collateralized debt obligations, or like
Or
securities or
leverage
something, I think
buyouts like LBOs, those were big in the 80s.
yeah, like I think that it would be too abstract and nobody would really get it. But if you're like, okay, commodities, it's a thing, like what wheat is, what bread is. Like when you eat that, it comes from wheat, and wheat has a price, it goes up, then like people make money, it goes down, people lose money. That's like I think it's just something that's a little more physical and like easier for the viewer to understand. I don't know that, but it's just a suspicion that if you have to pick a market to kind of like bring finance home to people, like commodities is like a pretty reasonable one to choose. So I thought that was so like in terms of like furthering the goal of the movie, I think that it works. It explains it reasonably well.
I mean, yeah, it explains it so like in such a basic fashion that like there's that scene where they're like pork bellies. You might know this from bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. And
Right.
Eddie Murphy breaks the fourth wall and looks
Right.
directly at the camera and is like,
Right, because it's like, okay, we're dumbing this down like to a to a like pretty ridiculous degree. I think that was the joke there, right?
The Actually, John, your point about people understanding commodities, I kind of forgot that, this movie comes out in 1983. In the 70s, we would have gone through the oil crisis. So maybe people also have a sense of, how the price of something far away translates into the price they pay at the pump as we're experiencing today. And then the understanding of like, the speculative aspects or things like that too. So the oil doesn't come
Yeah,
up in this movie at all, but you make a good point about the
literally
commodity
at all.
being people's products. Yeah.
No, they have 5 commodities. It's all agriculture. It's like orange juice, pork bellies, coffee, wheat, and corn.
And gold.
Oh, gold.
I don't know if that's like all that they trade. I think it may just be like
That's
here's
all
like
they
an
say.
illustrative example of yeah, but again, it's for the purposes of if they're like we also have like synthetic risk transfers. Like I don't think that would like aid in you know telling the story, right?
I think they do a terrible job of explaining naked short selling and what cornering the market is. Also, this is an era where they still have trading floors, and when I saw the trading floor scene, it seemed like a koi pond at the zoo where you drop in like bread and they go crazy. But I was hoping for more of the like signals, and like no one was wearing a jacket, or like they weren't wearing their jacket with their numbers and things like that. So I kind of felt like that. I mean, I don't know. They're not going for authenticity here, but
I mean, they had the
I
little
was
pocket protector with their
Yeah,
names
they
on
had the
them.
and
name.
then was that I don't know what they were using in the 80s for that, but there would have been less technology.
Like, did Eddie Murphy somehow pass his exam to be a commodities trader at some point in during the movie? Because he just shows up at the exchange and he's got his little thing on. He's ready to go. I guess the Dukes just kind of set him up with that at some point.
Do you have to
Yeah.
pass an exam to be on the floor?
I don't think you
I
can just
mean,
walk in off
or
the street and start trading
Yeah.
commodities. Like, you got to do something. Uh, I imagine.
I mean, or maybe the 80s were wild.
Yeah.
Maybe the
I mean,
80s were wild.
Maybe those rules didn't exist in the 80s, the way we'll talk
no,
about some
no
rules not
helmet.
existing in the
Um,
80s.
but yeah, I mean, look, it's fair that they don't super explain that, but like it is a comedy movie.
Yeah.
Like,
That is what we are
I
here to
will
do, though, is kind of like poke the the little holes. It's like when lawyers watch Law and
Right.
Order, they're like, "Well, that's not
Yeah.
the code of civil procedure," like that's what we're doing here. So go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I think that in not explaining some of the trading components and um how the scheme works on the trading floor, they're just trying to kind of gesture. Movie makers are trying to gesture at like, oh, this is complicated, right? Like that like theme of like finance is complicated and you don't have to learn that much about it. Also like this is how rich people get rich. Like I kind of feel like there's that signal about, and so you don't need to know what naked short selling is. Also, it doesn't come back to bite them. You kind of don't really need to know about cornering the market other than like it was a giant bet that they now have to pay. You don't need to know about a margin call other than it bankrupts them, right? And so these are just things that like we can kind of wave around that are shorthand for a bunch of things happening. But it is funny because people do say this movie is about finance, and then there's like it's really not about, if you can kind of watch the whole movie without really understanding some of the financial elements other than like greed or money, you know?
But what movie? Yeah, no, that's fair. It's about finance enough. So Kiah, I mean, like, do you want to talk about naked short selling? Do you want to explain what naked short
Okay, a
selling
naked
is?
short sell, you don't really. Okay, this movie, you don't need to know about it. But what Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd do, Winthrop and Valentine, is they are shorting, which is betting that the price of an asset will fall. But they are not in possession of that asset. And so that's what the naked part comes from, is they're not in possession. It's like a pure bet, and that if it moves against them, they will have to cover the short by going out and buying it. And so this like it's not illegal to do this, but like it's kind of frowned upon, and it's a little difficult to do this. A lot of brokers like you'll have to have money, or you'll have to have the shares in your possession in order to short them. And the way you short a share is you you believe a price is going to fall, and so you like borrow the shares from someone, and then you short them, and then you make money off of the difference in the price between like the borrowing and what you buy it at, what you like, and what you like give it back to the person to the firm at. So there's like that's how a short works, and it's just a bet that an asset's going to fall. So that's what they're doing. They're betting the assets are going to fall.
Is there like you borrow something, sell it when you think the price is
Yeah,
high, and then
you
when the
borrow
price
it from someone,
falls,
sell
you
it. It's like
buy
a
it back
handbag.
when
Yeah.
it's lower?
Yep.
Yeah, right.
And you would buy it
Derivative.
back, and then you make a difference on that profit margin.
Yeah, watching this movie also made me realize how things are really just like things were really just legal. Like people were really just doing things.
Yeah.
But except like the cornering the market piece is
Is
what
cornering the
was
market illegal? That wasn't clear to me. It's a bet that goes against them. Is it illegal?
Yeah, no, cornering the market is like manipulating the price. That's
Right.
what's illegal. So
Right.
for example, like this movie, I know took some inspiration from Silver Thursday, which was a like an incident of cornering the market in 1980 maybe, when these billionaires and the Hunt family were basically like uh cornering the silver market. Basically, they were like buying all the silver, like
And
billions of
driving up the
dollars.
price or something?
And yeah, and driving up the price to the point where I think I read that like Tiffany's put out an ad being like, it's so wrong that the Hunt brothers are like cornering the silver market. Um, but yeah, and then eventually, uh, like there was an investigation, and then there was a margin call basically where the Hunt brothers were like, "Oh no, like we don't have the money to pay for this," which was like $1 billion, like $1.5
Yeah.
billion or something, in like 1980. And I think the solution and so like it was going to have an impact on the financial market, like
Yeah, like it
like
was
it's
going to
going to
drop the price too much or something, or
yeah, and then it was gonna ripple
ripple
across.
across. Yeah.
And then, but I guess a bunch of or several banks put together a loan for the Hunt brothers. Well,
Boo.
hey, look, they were looking out for the health of the financial system,
Right.
but yeah, ostensibly. So manipulating the price
Okay.
is illegal. I mean, famously, this country likes competition and
Yeah, I've
likes,
heard of.
the market to be able to do its own thing. And so that's what's illegal. Naked short selling, I guess not.
I don't think it's illegal.
And trading on stolen insider
Yeah.
information.
John, is
John,
trading on inside information in the commodities market legal or illegal?
It is now illegal. But it
tell us
wasn't.
about it. Tell us about it.
Thank you guys for teeing me up so organically. As I said, I used to cover the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and that is uh, a fun agency to cover. They do a lot of things, and at the time, it was all about derivatives. That's like what everyone was carrying. This was a couple of years after the financial crisis, and Gary Gensler was in charge, and he was just going full bore on cracking down on derivatives. And I was there mostly like all entirely interested in energy derivatives and energy products. And he was actually Gary. This is too long a story already, but just bear with me. Gary Gensler was like actually like surprisingly available after stuff. So like they'd have CFTC meetings, and he'd show up after, and you could have a gaggle, and you could ask him whatever you wanted. And have you ever had the experience of like watching a foreign film, and like all of a sudden they kind of use an English word because that's just the word for it? They'd be like,
Yeah,
"You
I
caught
watch
an eye
K
in the
dramas and that
Dr.
happens a
Pepper."
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so so he was kind of talking about derivatives and stuff, and he's like, and then we passed the Eddie Murphy rule, and I was kind of like, what? The Eddie Murphy rule? Like, what's that? Um, and so I looked it up. Apparently, they had passed this before I got there, but it was a part of Dodd-Frank, and it closed a loophole whereby trading on insider information, which has long been illegal in securities, was not illegal in the commodities space. So they just kind of closed that loophole.
Isn't it hard to kind of get insider information on commodities though? Like, other than this crop report?
Even in the movie, they don't portray it as easy. Like they have to like
Yeah.
shuffle some money off the books to some shady character who I guess they're bribing to like pass off the orange
Steal
juice report. Steal, yeah.
the
Well,
Reports, yeah.
but he's like, but isn't that guy? Um, when so for the other thing that's weird is that like they have a lot of like um news reports about like the upcoming orange juice
I know,
report,
that's
which
the
is like
least plausible. That's my least plausible thing about this movie is that would be on TV.
I've got my own least plausible thing about this movie, but and it's not that.
Yeah,
That is
back when there
highly
were 4
implausible.
channels too. Like, there were 4 channels that existed.
No news day has ever been so slow that a local news station is going to run a preview of the upcoming orange juice futures report. Like it's just not possible. But fortunate for the plot of this movie, I guess.
And just so that we're clear, just so everybody, like, who's listening and maybe hasn't seen this movie in a minute remembers, the Duke brothers, the billionaires, pay this shady character to steal or, like, somehow obtain
Yep.
a report, that is gonna talk about the agriculture outlook for I almost said 2026, for, like, the year that it was, 1984 or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
And
83.
they want to obtain this so that they will know what will happen to orange juice before the rest of the market. And then that is why they start, they
Try to corner
buy
the
a
market.
lot of, yeah, they try to corner the market of orange juice because, um, but like before they obtain the actual agricultural report,
Right.
our heroes of the movie, um, they get it first and they switch it out for a fake report. So the Duke brothers get this report that they think is real that says oranges had a bad season and so there won't be as much orange juice. And so the Duke brothers want to buy as much orange juice as possible. And they do this before the agriculture
Report
report's
comes
results
out
are announced.
on TV.
Then when the uh, results are announced, it's the truth is oranges were fine. It like orange juice, like there will be plenty of it.
Yeah.
They,
So the
they
price
say
should
like
be
a bad winter didn't
lower.
affect the orange harvest, and production should
Right.
be normal, right?
Yeah.
And so they're taking that. So I think that's like cornering the market is like if you in a situation like this where like there's a reduced supply and you've already gotten ahead and bought up a bunch of that supply, like then the idea is that you will then be controlling the supply and thus dictating the price of that commodity to whoever wants to buy it, and that then making all of your money and whatever.
Right. But the fact that they did this using that, like, using insider information, it was not necessarily illegal. And
I
in
love that.
fact,
I love it.
in fact, our heroes, as we said, they got the the actual agriculture report, and they, they shorted orange juice, and
Yeah.
well,
They're
they
shorting until the report comes out, basically.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they were also trading on insider information. They did not get in trouble. Um, yeah.
I think 2 wrongs make a right here. Oh, sorry, John. What were you gonna say?
I was just going to say the other thing that's interesting, or I thought of with this is that the comeuppance arc is actually or the means by which they get back at the Dukes is really similar to the way um, that Edmond Dantes gets back at one of his bad guys in the Count of Monte Cristo, which is like setting up an elaborate, like so the bad guy that sells him out in Count of Monte Cristo ends up being like a banker, and he's like getting insider information from like a government minister about crop yields and stuff, and like buying securities off of that, which also is not illegal in early 19th century France. I actually looked up, is that actually illegal in early 19th century France? And it's like, again, gets to like market manipulation is illegal, but it's like never prosecuted. So like
Yeah.
essentially it is actually fine. But he sets up an elaborate thing where it's like he gets them to invest all of his money in like a fake business that he doesn't invest in, thus like ruining him. And there's a margin call, and it's like almost exactly the same thing. So it's an oldie but goodie revenge meme,
Okay. Well, we'll go back to Count of Monte
Yeah, we
Cristo,
can add
maybe.
that to the list of movies. I will
Um,
say that there was in December 2023, someone was finally prosecuted by the
Yeah.
CFTC under the Eddie Murphy rule. And it was a commodities merchant who was receiving inside information or non public information about oil and gas trading. And I think that the trader had made $30 million off of it. And so they were disgorged of $60 million in their fine. So, good work. I'm sorry. I am sad that like Gary Gensler is like, hey, what Eddie Murphy or Valentine did is a crime, and I got to make sure that we can't ever remake this movie again. You know?
well, okay. Wait.
They said
Remaking the
in
movie.
2010.
Should we talk about prediction markets at all?
Oh, there you
Well,
go.
it's actually really funny that we're mentioning CFTC, right? Because that's
Right.
the regulator of event contracts.
Which is, yeah, it's not
Yeah.
funny. It's planned. It's that's why I'm bringing it up.
Talk to us about prediction markets, the CFTC, and the remake of Trading Places that you're going to be bankrolling here.
Well, let me start with the remake that, yeah, I'll be bankrolling. Obviously. I'll count you two as investors. Right now, I think our budget,
Yeah,
our
put me down.
budget's like a solid like $64.
Huh?
Yeah.
So whatever we can do with
I
that.
got 5 on it.
Great. But yeah, something goes on Kalshi
Yeah.
using like should be the same.
I think in prediction markets, they want you to use non-public information to place bets, right? And we could do some naked short selling or something.
Yeah. And you can't really like corner a market as much in the prediction markets. So it's not like quite the same.
Yeah.
But
We could do some
something-
parlays. The parlays could be like a corner, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay.
stack the
and
bets.
and then we bankrupt someone
Yep.
and get rich doing it.
Oh my God, we
have our
take the
hero-
other side. What's the one of don't both prediction markets, you're taking the other side of someone's bet. So we'd have to bait our villain to take the other
Yes.
side of our bet and then use the non-public information to stack our parlays in order to corner, right?
and give the villain false information.
That's right.
as well. That's key is feeding the false information. Anyway, I think that we have a blockbuster hit here.
What are we going to cut out of this remake relative to what was in the 1983 movie?
Oh, should we go there?
I think we have to say for the record a couple of things about this movie.
For the record, this movie aged like milk.
Right. Well, like certainly I know what you mean.
Yeah, so this movie was made in 1983, and there are multiple words that like you can't even like you multiple words that are extremely offensive, inappropriate to gay people, to Black people,
People in sex work, yep.
people in sex work, and hostile to people with disabilities as well.
Yep.
So it was, a lot. There is also blackface.
Yeah, I was very
for
surprised.
a
No one
reason
prepared me
that-
for that.
I wasn't prepared. It shows up at the end. They want to disguise Dan Aykroyd
Yep.
so that he's not recognizable. And they decide to do so with blackface. And he does like a Jamaican accent. And it was jarring. And bad.
No
But
good.
so those are some of the things that I would say be aware of going into this. But this and I mean, I think this movie does a good job about bringing up the question of like equity versus equality. Like people are given the same, like let's say two people are given the same opportunity, but they start from a different starting ground. So I think about Dan Aykroyd is this rich,
Yeah.
like went to Eton and Harvard and or whatever he did. And Eddie Murphy is like doesn't like is homeless and living on the streets and whatever. And the idea is like, you know, or the question that they ask, which is
Yeah.
like so caricaturely evil, is like, oh, is Dan Aykroyd like a better person, or did he just have all these opportunities? And is Eddie Murphy a worse person,
Hmm.
or did he just have fewer opportunities? So then they flip the script
Yeah.
and give Eddie Murphy like the same opportunities as Dan Aykroyd. I think like that's a fun way to look at the nature versus nurture question, and like the question about like privilege and how much privilege like really impacts the course of your life. I think it raises question like raises points about like poor people.
Yeah.
It's not like their fault that
Yeah.
they're poor,
Right.
like there's certain situations that you can't climb out of. And one thing that I think it's it feels funny even saying like one thing I think it's not very self-aware about is because it's 1983 and it's not self-aware about anything. But one thing that I think a remake, if we tried to
If
do
we
the
did
same
it
thing,
again, yep.
could look at is this investigates socioeconomic class. I think there is some magnifying glass on racism, but there, you know, in this, Eddie Murphy is given a lot of money, and then it's like, oh, he does just as well as Dan Aykroyd. Whereas, obviously, like two wealthy people, if one is white and one's black, like they will not have the same, it won't be as easy, as simple for both of them. Anyways, I'll get off the moral,
Yeah.
questions,
I think something
and we
interesting.
can get silly again if we want.
Something that's interesting too is that like when they do this change. So when they sit Valentine down with the bacon and the
Yeah.
gold and the whatever. So they explain to him what they do, and they're like, so we're brokers. So people buy this stuff, and then whether that price goes up or down, we get our commission. And he's like, oh, so y'all are bookies. And like, I think that's one of the core observations of the movie is that like Duke and Duke are hustlers are doing a hustle just the same way he's doing his hustle, and yet
Hmm.
like society frowns on the guy selling drugs, which is a commodity, that like has demand. I mean, again, I'm not like defending drug dealers. I guess I am. I don't know. Who cares? This is like the very beginning of the war on drugs when this came out, and it's like the shorthand of like he's like this is angel dust. You see like the joke that like
Yeah.
the recurring joke with Dan Aykroyd, like he's a heroin dealer. It wasn't heroin. It was angel dust, PCP. But that's not the point. Like, um, but it's just kind of like the way that society kind of like condemns one kind of gambling or like hustling and
Hmm.
like glorifies another. I think is a contrast that we are supposed to draw, and it's pretty front and
When the
center.
Dukes are also breaking laws and
Yeah, for
acting
sure.
legally, I mean, Kiah,
What?
once again, is this a finance movie that's actually a crime movie? Like Margin Call?
I I mean, how many is it possible to have a finance movie where there's someone's not doing a crime and the question is like, is this a socially sanctioned crime or is a crime that like benefits people with power and therefore won't be prosecuted, right? Like
Yeah.
that's
I
I
mean,
think a real
every
commentary there.
finance movie.
Like that kind of resentment and sort of suspicion of finance, I think, is like at the heart of what the movie is kind of driving at, right? Is like it's like okay, so there's nothing inherently wrong or greedy about like buying wheat or any kind of commodity because people are going to need it, and if the price goes up then like you should do a better job of buying it. If it's going to go down, you should do a better job of selling it. Like that's not wrong, but like you can do wrong things, or you can definitely take missteps and like manipulate markets and be dirty about it. I don't know, I think that's just kind of interesting.
And I will say the one last thing
Yeah.
is the moral of the story at the end is kind of like money solves all problems.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's not a
Like,
crime if you steal money from rich people, I think is a really
well,
important
it's not a
lesson.
crime. That's one, like, it's not a crime if you steal money from rich people, but then all, like, if you're unhappy, like wealth will fix
Oh,
it.
yeah. Money does solve all the
So
problems. That's actually a really important takeaway.
yeah,
I took a note
anyway,
at the end,
we're
which
all
is
adults.
when Eddie Murphy says, when they're trying to figure out how to get back at the Dukes, he says, "It seems to me the best way to hurt rich people is to turn them into poor people," which like seems to me like kind of the thesis of the movie, which is like sucks to be poor, don't do it, which is, sort of steps on its own moral, I think, or it's like the observation of the movie is that like people are really just kind of the same. You're not a better person if you have more money,
Right.
or a smarter person, or like necessarily deserving of your station. Um, so go steal some, I guess, is kind of like the point. I don't know, or like manipulate some
Yeah,
markets and do what you got to do. I also just thought it
it's
was
by the same
interesting.
people.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead,
John,
Kath.
what were you going to
It's
say?
it's written by the same people who wrote Space Jam. Like I don't know, like
Yeah, like
how philosophical could it be? But go
this is
ahead,
not
John.
this is not start. We're not going to. Yeah, we're maybe assigning like a level of philosophical, inquiry that may not really be there. Um, I was going to say the other thing that I thought was interesting when I watched this, the like the time before this, it was during the zero lower bound era, and one of the things that was most jarring to me at that point was how uh, Jamie Lee Curtis, when she's talking about like, so she takes Louis to her apartment. She's like, "This is my apartment. It's a dump, but it's cheap and it's clean. I got $25,000 in T-bills earning 4% interest, and I figure I got
Yep.
3 more years of this, and I'm out." Like that's a degree of financial literacy uh, seen in that you don't always see in a movie. And I thought that, and what was remarkable to me was like, wow, she's getting 4% interest like on just like effectively savings. Like that's unbelievable at the time because like you couldn't get anything on savings at all. Of course, now it's a little bit, that's a little bit less unrealistic. But like this movie predates,
Yeah.
it's like predates the SNL crisis. It's like we're really, this is a window into finance from like your, your my parents, like era, like the
Yeah.
50s and 60s, more than
I will
today.
say that I don't know what the insurance limit was in, I guess it's T-bills, so it doesn't matter, but $25,000 in 1983 is only $82,000 today, and I do not think that's enough money for her to live on.
She may have said more than that. It may
Okay.
have been 40,000. I thought
Was
she
it
said
for you?
40.
She gives
I
him
actually
all this
didn't
Um,
write down
money
the
for the
number.
trading scene.
Yeah.
yeah,
So
I
I
thought
mean,
it was
she ends up
40,
okay.
but you know what? I trust her.
Yeah.
I
For
like
sure.
anyway.
But it's like that's the whole point of the scene is like this is somebody who knows how to make the system work for her,
Oh,
and
yeah.
uh you can't, and that I think is kind of like an interesting, you know,
So,
segue.
John, Catherine, one of the questions I want us to address is the question of taking care of business. In this movie, are our main characters taking care of business or are they not taking care of business? Catherine?
I think our main characters are taking care of business. I mean,
Okay.
if we look at like, it gets a little dicey there at times. But look, Eddie Murphy, like even when he's like made the head of the commodities firm or
Yeah.
whatever, he takes care of business. And at the very end, come on, they take care of business.
Okay. John, do you agree with that assessment that our characters are taking care of business?
I think they're not only taking care of business but also working overtime. And I think I mean, yeah, I thought it was interesting how like Valentine, uh, towards like the whatever middle of the movie when he's at the firm, he's like talking to the Duke brothers. He's like, "No, I think we need to hold off because we're getting into the holiday season and like bacon's gonna go up." And so
Yeah.
he's actually getting into the job, and he's like that late night when Dan Aykroyd's like planning drugs in his desk. He's up late. It's the office Christmas party. I also think we
Yep.
need to make a moment and talk about the dirty Santa beard and salmon scene, uh, which is violence. I had that written down in my notes. Smoked salmon in dirty Santa beard is violent.
Actually, you know what we need to talk about is whether this is a Christmas movie. But yes,
Wait,
but we do need to
I'll
get to
take
that.
But first,
First things first. First
Yeah.
things first.
Kiah,
So like, but he's up late and he's going over like the
Yeah.
accounts payable, and he finds the check.
Yeah,
That,
he's going over. He's
Dan
signing the
Aykroyd also found.
paychecks. He has to
Yeah, so he's
sign
like
paychecks.
he's doing stuff. He's getting
Kiah,
into the role. Go ahead.
and do you think he's taking? I was just going to say, Kiah, what do you think?
I think they're
Are
taking
they
care.
taking him?
It's getting dicey. Everyone's. I think our main characters take care of business. Yes. I also like it. Again, it just bums me out that Gary Gensler made like the plot of this movie illegal. Like what a killjoy. How, and how. And like to the point about commodities, like this movie couldn't work in the securities, in a securities trading situation because the conduct was already illegal. So props to our filmmakers for finding such like a beautiful legal loophole that this movie gets to exist and then doesn't get to exist in the future. But yes, they are taking care of business. And crimes aren't crimes if they are funny or they are ripping off or if you're stealing money from rich people. Okay, so in our waning minutes, I want to bring up, and John already alluded to this. We have a work Christmas party, and not only is it like a holiday party, it is on Christmas Eve, and it is in the workplace. And this is actually the second movie from the 80s where these two things happen. The other movie that I know of where this happens is Die Hard, and people will look me in the eye and call it a Christmas movie, and I think that's wrong. I have a whole reason why I think that's wrong. I'm happy to go into it. But my question for you both is Trading Places a Christmas movie? Catherine?
I mean, no, but it is wintry.
Okay.
Like it feels like a wintry. Although I think that it came out in June.
It came out in June. Also, Die Hard also came out in July. So don't look me in the eye and tell me that. Because
yeah, this isn't a Christmas movie, but it is wintry.
Okay. John, is this movie a Christmas movie?
I think it depends on how you define Christmas movie. Like if a Christmas movie has to be about like Santa and like a beard and presents and peace on earth and then I guess not. I mean, the thing is like Christmas movies tend to be kind of dramas and tend to be kind of sappy a little bit, or like I guess Christmas movies can be comedies. That's not true. Elf is a Christmas movie. I'm saying
National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
So like, I guess what I mean
I would
is that,
argue
like,
Home Alone's not a Christmas movie, FYI. I'll go ahead.
That's a really narrow definition of Christmas movie in that case. I think it is,
yeah,
I think
Kiah,
it is
what
a Christmas movie. If a Christmas movie is about a sort of a movie about introspection and kind of hoping for a better world, then and it's set roughly around Christmas, then I think this meets the bill. Also, speaking of plausible financial crimes, there's actually a tie-in with Die Hard in Die Hard with a Vengeance. That's the movie where they drill into the Federal Reserve and steal all the gold.
It's on the list. It's on the list.
Oh, wait, John, yeah, you're getting ahead of us.
Yeah,
but,
you are. You're previewing our movies.
But what? Yeah, but what? Sorry,
well, I'm just saying. So like, when that movie was made, the filmmakers actually got like a call from the FBI and interviewed because they were like, "How did you know?" Like that turns out that was actually like a plausible means of robbing the Federal Reserve of New York, and so like they've done things since to like make it not so, but the like
okay,
that movie
wait,
was
pausing because we will have to talk about this later. But
he can come back. He can come back and bring this fun fact.
I don't want to cut you off too hard, John, but this is stealing thunder.
Fair enough. I've said my bit, but I think it is a Christmas movie. I think it is like a loose Christmas movie. I think it's like a slant rhyme Christmas movie, but I think it meets the minimum requirements necessary to be such.
Kiah?
Oh, it's not even close. A Christmas movie has to have Christmas being a core, non-substitutable part of the plot. And so I think almost I don't know why these movies keep having office parties around Christmas Eve. I think that's psychotic. Apparently in the 80s, we hated hanging out with our families around the holidays. But like it could, again, I always go back to it could have been a retirement party. Now, the reason why it has to kind of be a Christmas party is because Winthrop has to sneak back in and like infiltrate the office. But I think he could have done that in a waiter's costume or a catering staff costume. And so we don't need the Santa suit at all. And then I asked Alex, who thinks Die Hard is a Christmas movie, and he said that he says it's not set at Christmas. It happens over the month of December and ends after New Year's, which
That
yeah,
is true.
but that's not, you can have a
That's
Christmas
not a
movie, you can have a
disqualifying
holiday movie.
factor. Yeah. Yeah, like It's a
Yeah.
Wonderful Life doesn't happen all at Christmas, I don't think.
Oh,
Right?
well, It's a Wonderful Life is not a Christmas movie. That's a really important
Well,
part
okay.
too. um,
These are crazy takes.
and then he also said that it doesn't have a Christmas vibe, and that Die Hard does have a Christmas vibe, which I think is bananas crazy because, as we've established, both of these movies come out in
I think,
the summer.
I mean,
So
if vibes is the thing, I think Trading Places has way more of a Christmas vibe than Die Hard
Right.
does. And Die Hard is like the kind of hot take Christmas movie.
I know because
Outer edge
it's
of
not,
like,
but yeah.
Anyway,
Well, thank you for allowing me to chat your ear off about this movie. And thanks for the non-problematic, reboot that we will be financing.
Perfect.
Yeah, let us know if you have any casting suggestions. But Catherine and John, thank you so much for joining me today.
This was so fun. Thanks. Thanks
Yeah.
for chatting. Until next time.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a lot of fun.